Most gyms fall down because they either don't have the resource or the know-how to how to run weekly CPD for their coaches. During the pandemic, when the gyms were closed, I felt as though my business was very fragile.
There are lots of personal trainers out there in the market today who want to build something for themselves, but they just don't know how to move. How do you make a personal training into business?
At the very start, there's kind of two ways, right? You can either gain investment, in which case you can go a little bit faster, or you can bootstrap a business and get going by yourself.
Yeah, I have to say this. We were on the way here. We were just trying to get some coffees for everybody here. We went into this place called the Yard, and we said, we want 6 coffees, and we just started getting into conversation with the guy who owns the place. So he said, really? I said, yes. He said, okay, the coffees are on the house. It doesn't happen fucking anywhere in the world, man. What's it that we're going to see next from MARCHON Supplements?
There's a product that I believe will be the world's greatest multivitamin.
Thanks for doing this, Ollie. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great that not only have you done so well in training and fitness, you've created a name for yourself in the podcast space. You've done so well. You've got the right kind of guests in. There's so much you can learn from entrepreneurs, and I think one of the things I've realized is that listening to people's success stories and understanding what they went through to make what they made is so very important. And you've done so well in getting the right kind of people. I've seen some of the guests on the on your podcast. Amazing. What made you start the podcast?
I've been incredibly lucky, I think, during my time as a fitness professional, as a coach, someone who's in the competitive space, and I guess just growing a business, that I've come into contact with so many great people from the world of sport, business, entertainment, and I'm lucky to often have conversations with them, have their personal number, reach out to them if ever I'm kind of stuck with something. And it's something that the younger me would have loved at various stages of my journey. So now if I can kind of pay it forward by having them on the podcast and sitting down for longer form conversations, unpacking some of the bits of detail that I might not know about them, which I would find insightful, which I hope my listeners who share the same kind of values and vision potentially as me in the fitness space, I feel that there's a lot of value that they can take from that. So that was kind of my goal for doing it, alongside the fact that trying to grow now the Marchon brand with more eyeballs and more awareness, and also things that I can show strings to my bow, from being a personal trainer to now growing a business to someone that can now sit down and have hopefully fairly articulate conversations. It's just a way of, I guess, giving more long-form content and exposure to what we're about at Marchon, whilst also giving a platform to great guests to come on and speak about things that they're interested in.
You're a very likable person, Ollie. I mean, in the sense, I have to say this. We were on the way here. We were just trying to get some coffees for everybody here at the studio, and we went into this place called the Yard, and we said, we want 6 coffees, and we just started getting into conversation with the guy who owns the place, and he said, so how are you in Harpenden? We said, we've traveled from Manchester, we're doing a podcast. Oh wait, who are you doing a podcast with? They said, we're doing a podcast with Ollie Marchon. He says, really? I said, yes. He said, okay, the coffees are on the house. It doesn't happen fucking anywhere in the world, man. So you built a community, and I remember we spoke about this, the last time we met, that, being a part of the community is truly being a part of the community. It's not an online community. It's what you've done on ground, right, which has made you who you are today, the kind of person you are, the difference you made in people's lives. Why would a coffee shop owner give me 6 fucking Americanos and a sourdough bread free, saying that because I'm shooting Ollie Marchon? How have you been able to do that?
I think it's just relationship building. I think when we talk to some of the gym owners that we look after inside our gym owner network, and we talk about how they can grow their business, we talk about the fact that everyone's competing for eyeballs and attention online and trying to go viral online, when really, if you're trying to grow a business like a gym business in your local market, you just want to be viral in your town, right? And that isn't necessarily going to come from social media and posting and content. It's going to come from being boots on the ground, going and creating connections and rapport with local other businesses, which are all doing the same thing. And then you get this kind of compounding effect where everyone's trying to help each other. So for me, it's just about, connections where possible, things that I'm incredibly interested in, which is obviously fitness, but food and coffee are big parts of a fitness professional's life. So having conversations with these guys, finding ways in which I can help their business, and in turn it often comes back to help us with our business, because they'll recommend our gym, or they'll, my coaches actually went in there from the gym last Friday, unprompted from me. Because it's only a short walk from where our gym is. They went in there on their Friday meeting, and they all got free coffees too. So I think in your local market, just being a good person, trying to create connections and build friendships and trust and rapport with other business owners.
Just being Ollie Marchon.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that are obviously going to have unsavory things to say about me. I don't think I've necessarily always left a great impression on everyone, but I think I'll always do my best once I'm engaged with the conversation with someone to see how I can help them as much as they can help me. So for this example with local businesses, I'm always the first person to try and share or tag other people. Same with other fitness professionals or other gym owners or people which most people would see as like competitors. I would be the first person to use my social media, which has a fairly sizable audience of avid fitness consumers, and I'll post about other people, whereas many people in the fitness space wouldn't do the same thing. But I've always found that it's always come back to help me.
Yeah, and that's the exact reason why you're the first episode of this particular podcast. So my typical podcast was around entrepreneurs in the fitness space, but this one is more around people who own gyms and businesses which are impacting the community. And I think the typical larger gyms, the budget gyms, are a lot about the real estate play, the property play, where get the right leases, the right equipment, have people walking through the doors. So the mathematics is very different. You say I need to get 5,000 people or 10,000 people coming at these many pounds per month, and it's a recurring revenue kind of a thing. So they're more or less, I would say, they're all real estate plays, right? If you get that wrong, you're absolutely fucked. Now this entire episode, the series that I'm going to start, and is going to be around the training part of the fitness, which is the core, which is the product, right? Unlike the other gyms, the larger gyms, your core, your heart is actually the training, the community, the people. So if you go back, there's a very good book called Sweat Equity. It talks about how Barry's Bootcamp came into being, how Lululemon became big, how Ironman became a big rage in the world. How did these people actually become big and became phenomenons which went globally viral? And I think there are some gyms in the world, like Marchon, where I think the potential is to be a great, big, huge. 10 years from now, Marchon would be like a Barry's Bootcamp, and saying that you got 2,000 studios, 3,000 studios across the world. I don't know, but I just think that the quality of work that you're doing is just unreal. And there are people like that, but nobody knows them. They are very strong in their own community. They're very strong in what they're doing. They have a great product. Now they need to scale. And you've reached a stage where I think you're now a global brand in terms of a name. People know you across the world. You've traveled the world. And you've started from Harpenden, right? I think most people, if I were to go back in India and ask people, do you know where Harpenden is? They won't know. They would probably know London. They would know Manchester. They would know Liverpool. They won't know the place. So you've been able to create a brand from a small place in the UK, taken it to the world, have a great followership, love what you do, make sure others, kind of following, pursue, and they're doing what they like to do. How have you been able to create this brand for yourself, for people to enjoy as well?
It's a good question. I think taking it back to the start, the goal for me was always to try and create a career as a fitness professional. I was always very career driven, and that was handed down to me from my father and his family, which were all very successful people. My father was a surgeon, and my uncles were all successful business owners. So for me, it was all about a career. And when my rugby career had finished, it was how can I make a career out of being a fitness professional? Now, if you look at the statistics, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be in this game for 5 years, let alone 10, 15 and beyond. And often as a personal trainer, you're training people with high disposable incomes, they live a nice lifestyle. And I was always around people who were very successful, and I was thinking, how can I experience some of that as a personal trainer? So the goal was to make personal training a career, and part of the mission was to elevate the status, respect, and long-term career prospects of a personal trainer, which is why we built our education business. So with Marchon, thinking about those things, I knew that the way that we could grow was to create a world-class product, because no one was really focusing on the coaching part of personal training or fitness. So it was always about a world-class product. It was about the way we programmed. It was about the way we consulted with prospective clients, the kind of the interview process to unpack why it was that they wanted to get into fitness, what meant so much to them, what did their goals really actually mean, what are they looking to achieve, not just in the first 3 months, but in 12 months, and how could we build this long-term journey-centric approach to their health and fitness. So with that needed to come our ability to not only get them instant results, because that's what we know would get them momentum, but help them train for a lifetime. So that then guided a lot of our education, a lot of our understanding, a lot of our reading around the subject, and also our ability to really connect with people. Again, going back to what the essence of coaching is, it's to be able to connect with people and take them from A to B and B to C and beyond. And I think those early days of delivering the 10,000 hours on the coaching floor with many different people from all different walks of life, with various different experiences within health and fitness, gave us a good apprenticeship into coaching. And when you start to get the first 100 results and those 100 people tell their friends, and then the influence of social media as well, which was beginning to boom back in the days when we started, 2015, 2016 and beyond, it provided this real shop window into what MARCHON was about. And our facilities looked different to other facilities because we invested heavily into the facility. Our programming looked like it was influenced from the world of strength and conditioning, professional sport, but it was brought to the masses. The way in which we tried to coach and the passion and enthusiasm we brought to the coaching floor was clear for everyone to see. And then when the pandemic happened, we leaned heavily into personal brand and what our brand MARCHON, but also our individual personal brands of the coaches that worked for MARCHON, what they represented in the online space. So could we talk and give education and guidance around nutrition? Could we talk on sleep? Could we talk on breath work? Could we talk on training? Could we talk on other lifestyle practices? And really have this kind of holistic approach. So I think all of those things just gave this a perception, but perception did equal reality, that MARCHON was a collection of coaches who all shared the same values and a mission towards bringing health and fitness to the masses. It was always about an elevated experience from the facility design right through to the way in which someone left a session, the way they felt. It was always about trying to stay up to date with the relevant research and coaching philosophies and principles. And over time, as we've gathered momentum, it was bringing in more experts in their field. So what started as myself, my brother and my best friend, the three of us, is now over 30 people in the company, and all of them have got a huge amount of experience, huge amount of passion, and they all deliberately work on their own personal brand, which in turn then builds this perception again that MARCHON is getting bigger and better, and there's momentum behind it.
Yeah, and you've been able to grow from a single person who's doing his own business, running a PT business, to creating a brand. How does this journey, how do you pursue this journey as a personal trainer? Because there are lots of personal trainers out there in the market today who want to build something for themselves, but they just don't know how to move, how to do the next step of, how do you make a personal training into business, which can then employ more number of people? Because then the problems completely change. When you're doing a PT as an individual versus when you're running an organization, the set of problems are very different. Can you run us through this journey?
Yeah, I think there's, at the very start, there's kind of two ways, right? You can either gain investment, in which case you can go a little bit faster, and things potentially could be easier, although the dynamics of that investment could complicate things later down the line, or you can bootstrap a business and get going by yourself. And I think if you are a very successful trainer, we use the term in your local market, so being the go-to guy or girl in your local market where you have whatever your critical mass of sessions is, which probably is around 30 hours a week of delivery. Yeah. Now, there's a period where you start to go 30, 40, maybe even 50 hours a week because you're looking to really stretch the capacity of that single-person business, your one-to-one PT business, and then you're looking to unlock scale. And those clients from 30 to 50, or those sessions from 30 to 50, it's short-lived because no one can really deliver quality, but it enables you to start to generate the cash that you can then take that next step with. So for me, it was about a period of time where I was delivering far more sessions than I should have done, with a means to generate some cash and be able to put it back into the business. Now, often coaches will start to generate the sort of cash and spend it on stuff that isn't conducive with growing a business. But if you can save that money, and then you can start to invest it into that next step. And I believe at that stage you then have, in theory, a waiting list of people. So you have demand, right? So you have product market fit, you have demand. So you know that if you're going to take that next step to then have a bricks and mortar gym, if that's the route you're going to take, you should be able to meet your overheads. You've obviously budgeted this out on a financial model. You can meet your overheads, you can meet the rent, you can meet the rates, and you should be able to take on a member of staff, because if you've got the waiting list, you need that member of staff, and that's the real key. So during that period, you need to be able to create a compelling offer for your right or left-hand man or woman that's going to come on this journey with you, your assistant coach. And that person will then start to take on some of the deliverables around programming and marketing, sales, whatever it may be. And depending on, like I said, on how quickly and how fast you want to go big, that's the logical first step, is to create the demand, find someone who's going to be your first quote-unquote employee, and then you're going to take that next step. And then really it's a case of rinsing and repeating that process. bring in more people, fulfill on those people with a world-class product, keep retention really high, save the money to invest in the next member of staff. And if you've made that financial kind of forecast, you should be able to see at what stage, how many members do I need to be able to employ that second or third coach? At what stage do I need, or what stage can I then deploy more money into marketing, for example? And then it becomes a little bit more of a systemized way of looking at that first gym. I believe most gyms in a town where you've been that busy personal trainer, you can get to maturity in around 2.5 years. We from the data points we have within the Gym Owners Network, small group personal training gyms should be charging somewhere between £250 and £400. Large group facilities should be charging somewhere between £150 and £250. Now, obviously, geography might change some of that, but we have examples in the arse end of Scotland right the way through to more affluent places and everything in between to show that it can be done if you focus on a great product, great service, building community, and putting the people's results at the forefront of everything you do.
I remember, Ollie, when I heard you for the first time at Performex, and you said somebody asked you about marketing and what should we be doing and how have you been able to build a brand. And I remember you said go old school, go back old school, the pamphlets, going to cafes, being a part of the community, truly being a part of the community. You wearing your MARCHON t-shirts, walking into a cafe and people asking, oh, these fit guys, what do they do and what's happening, should we be a part of this community? That's old school, and I think that's very important. People have missed out on doing that now, and they directly want to jump on the bandwagon of influencing people online while they're not actually truly influencers or running ads on social media. Now, two things. I think first of all, for you to do well, your product has to be fucking amazing, right? You have to be a great trainer. You have to get that feeling from the community that these guys are doing a good job. You have to have the right results happening there. And also be a part of the community, truly be a part of the community, and not an ad which runs on, I would rather want to see an Ollie Marchon, face to face in the cafe next, which is next door to me, than to see on my screens. And I think people miss that first step. At what stage do you think we jump from being in the local community, in the real world, and to the digital world and start spending money there?
Yeah, a great example of this is how we opened up the podcast, right, with the coffee story from you. I mean, what perception did you have of my gym and my brand by driving down from Manchester, going into a coffee shop and receiving your morning coffee for free because of...
Six of them.
Who I am and who the gym is. So, yeah, and that stuff doesn't happen overnight. It's the long-term play. Yeah. So again, my whilst I'm saying a gym can get maturity to maturity in 2.5 years, I believe that's what you should shoot for because that's where things begin to get exciting for you as a business owner. But it is still like a 10-year process. We're 8 years into this in this town. But to answer your question, I truly believe, again, so long as you've done your due diligence, and most towns across the UK and further afield outside of the UK have got more than 100 people that need personal training, particularly at a price point that is more attractive with small group personal training, with the model that we deploy. And the first 100 people should be very easy to come by if you're good at what you've done and you've gone through those steps of getting to the 50 hours of delivery as a one-to-one personal trainer. And if you get to 100 people, those 100 people will know 2, 3, 4, 5 people just like them who will then bring the next 50 people to your gym. And I truly believe that would happen if you did a good job, because they're talking to their friends. You're going through this transformational process with them. They're looking different, they're talking different, they're walking different, and often people will pick up on that, and they'll ask them the question, and then they'll be your biggest advocate. So, I believe everything can be done, particularly in towns that are fairly tight knit. I think London's a bit different, but in these smaller towns, I think things can be done very organically. But I do think there is merit to some ads going out with testimonials. So longer form testimonials where you're sitting down and you're seeing someone that looks like you as a potential member to the gym, talking through their experiences, what they thought before they joined the gym, what they now think the other side of it, what the gym's done for their life, why it means so much to them, so that your prospective clients can see, can gain insight from someone who's kind of been on that similar journey from them. So those top of the funnel awareness ads I think are very good. I think there is some quick wins to be had playing on the emotions of looking for 10 people that are looking to tone up, get fit, and that are out of shape. But those, when you go fishing for those types of people, you'll fish them very quickly. They become a harder sell. And once you've fished in a town that's fairly small, then you need a more sophisticated way of marketing, particularly with your ads. And then the organic or the offline stuff that we discussed. I think flyering, I think having the conversations, running the community events, anything that's going on in your town, whether there's local schools that you can partner up with, if there is a local 5K or a local fair on the green, whatever it may be, making sure that you're front and center, you're running challenges, you're interacting with the community where possible, and you're adding value, I think is always, it's things that people do one-off, and then if they expect an immediate return on investment and they don't do it the next year, it's something you have to do. Put it in your calendar every year. Half a dozen things where you're really working with the community and you're not looking for an immediate return on investment, but you're adding value back into the market.
I remember, while we were driving from Manchester over here, Jake and I were having a discussion, and he said, Ollie Marchon has been overnight success in 8 years. So, it's taken 8 years to be an overnight success. And you mentioned now 8 years. Run me through these 8 years in terms of what kind of events did you do? How did they, from the first year when you started, the first couple of months, 2-3 months, what did you do? The first year, second year, how did your events change, and how did the composition of the events change in terms of people from your side and people from the community being a part of it?
Yeah, so it's been 8 years since the inception of the gym, but I was personal training in this town for probably 4 or 5 years prior to that. So it's a lot. I guess it's a lot longer. But 2016 was when MARCHON, as it's known, was kind of born. To answer your question around the events, it was very quickly apparent to me that there was days within the year that we could play on that became themed, that would give people either a reason to train or something to look forward to outside of the monotony of what can sometimes be trying to get in shape, right? You've got to just get to the gym 3 days a week, maybe 4, maybe 5, but there is times of the year where that becomes difficult. It's cold, it's dark early mornings, it's dark late at night, work stress, family stress. And we'd always encourage people to just keep showing up and keep being consistent. But often the results for the Gen Pop client can become hard to come by after a given period of time, because for whatever reason, they lack the ability to organise their life around the kitchen and the gym and the social occasions. But they're still going to the gym. So how could we then create these moments where we could add a little bit of impetus and just inject some energy into what training in the gym meant to them? So we did things like the MARCHON Games. We called it a game day. We started to have women's days. We started to have men's days. We'd have like a summer game day. And these would be for members only. Now, what that created was a load of noise around the gym for us to be able to market towards it, keep people on course and ready for those days, which would drive retention. But then those people would then take to social media, because it would be days where they would be challenged a little bit more around their strength or their fitness with, key tests that were somewhat challenging for them, but not overly intimidating that they would completely freeze. But they would then take to social media and share in their wins and share on their latest back squat numbers or their latest assault bike thing that they did. And then outside of that, we would then look at what the local town was doing. So in Harpenden, as most towns, there'd be like a summer event, there'd be a 10K, there'd be other things. So we'd go down and put gazebos in there, and we'd just take an assault bike and an embody scanner down, and we'd run challenges, and we'd let people stand on the embody scanner. We'd start to give them information around their body composition and what that meant and ways in which they could combat that. And a way just to collect data. So we taking emails, taking numbers and names, and then we would use them in some sort of nurture sequence that start to bring people into the gym. And often it was a real superpower in the early days when you've got these front end offers, or whether it's a month in your gym or 6 weeks, and you're having a conversation with someone, you could just offer them into your gym for free, really, and just give them a free month to the gym. Or if the local schools were doing raffles for charity or whatever, we would often gift prizes, 3 months at the gym for free and what have you. So then all these parents, the kind of parent governing bodies in each school, the associations, they would then start to have a really good feeling about the gym. They knew they could lean on us to drive better prizes at their events, which would then start conversations. And over time, we'd basically infected the entire town, where possible, with people that, if they wanted to get in shape and they valued a premium service with the best trainers in the town and further afield, they'll come to us.
Yeah, Ollie, when you graduated from being a personal trainer to opening your first gym, right? How did your first gym look like? Was it like super fancy and,
I remember the first studio I had £5,000, so I renovated it to the best of my ability, but it was an old cattle shed on a farm. So you had to drive literally through a farm. You parked in the courtyard and then you came into this shed. which was literally a shed, and I spent about £5,000, and I was taking bits of equipment for wherever I could, beg, steal, or borrow it from. So the aesthetic of the gym, whilst at the time I was extremely proud about it, over a period of time, I could see that the industry, the facilities were beginning to look better and get better, and the market was really moving at a trajectory and pace that I needed to try and keep up with. So my goal when I started MARCHON was to have this kind of aesthetic, congruent looking gym with the one kit provider that was throughout the entire facility. But it was still a very humble building on this back building, outbuilding on a piece of private land. And I think I spent probably around £20,000 at that stage. Used one company to fit it all out. When you came in the doors and what went on inside the gym, and it was what went on from a coaching perspective. It wasn't the equipment; it was a coaching perspective that was really the magic. But it was still very humble beginnings, and that's what actually got known as the original MARCHON. And again, it's just a savvy use of social media and a real visceral, I guess it was a feeling that we were selling, but through social media, through the stories, through our posting, because of the passion and the consistency that the brand began to gather traction. It really wasn't anything particularly special if we look back at it now. And in fact, the gym is still there in situ, the original one, and there's still some of the old racks that are in it. And in this day and age, that gym wouldn't last 5 minutes because it really is a humble beginning.
Yeah, but you would be surprised with the same trainers, like you said. Very good statement you made. You said, the magic was the trainers and not the equipment. And I think a lot of times people undermine the value of the trainers, and they spend a lot more money on the kit. And I think you should be spending a lot more money on developing your trainers. If you're able to, and honestly, I've seen this. If you're a great trainer, Ollie, you could train anybody with a pair of kettlebells and fucking dumbbells just because who you are. If you're a great trainer, you don't have to hide behind equipment. You can do everything without the best kit in the world, because at the end of the day, if you're doing strength training, you just need very basic kit. Yeah, I mean, if you're running a commercial establishment, you need to have the brand, and you need to have the right kind of feel, the vibe to the place, all that's fine. But the core of it is the product. It is the training. It is the trainers, the people who are running the show. Now, obviously, the way you look, it can also be very intimidating for people, right? Mm-hmm. So what's your customer persona? How do you look at only athletes as your customers? Do you look at everybody? How do you define that for yourself? And how does a trainer define it for himself when he's starting a business?
It's a great question. I think a lot of people in the online space think that MARCHON is reserved for the very physically elite because of maybe the way I look or some of the other coaches that we've had that represent the brand. The truth is, inside our gyms, you have everyone from 16 years old up to 72. I think our eldest member now she's 75, and she came from the local church. Wow. Never been in a gym before the age of 70, and she's now in there 4 days a week. So it really is the place for everyone, as gyms should be. I think in terms of being able to attract those people in, there's various different ways in which or things you should be doing with your messaging, and I think trying to show the different shapes and sizes in your gym, and like I said, the testimonials is the biggest thing for this. Is showing people on the outside that are looking in that there are people in there that look like them or that did look like them, and they've been on the same journey as them, and it can work for them too. I think that's really important. But I also think there's a lot to be said for the aspiration and the inspiration that some figureheads within gyms and also online coaches can have. I think it's just a case of showing both the vulnerable side as well as the fit, somewhat egotistical side that fitness professionals, myself included, have. And I think humanizing yourself at times, I think, is really important, and being very relatable, whilst also being very well informed about the things that your potential clients would be struggling with, and being able to impart that knowledge on them. Because when you're constantly banging the drum around a consistent theme that is valuable to your potential clients, they see you as a person of authority and that you're credible, and then they'll often start to have trust with you and invest more time listening to your content or absorbing the things that you're doing, and then they're willing to, when there's an opportunity to then buy something for you, that more often than not they're ready.
Ollie, you mention a lot that you're not an influencer, right? You say, I'm not an Instagram influencer. While you are, I mean, and you're the true influencer. I call you as you're an influencer in the real world. And what you've done is now you've said, because I can't meet everybody in Harpenden or I can't meet everybody in London, I want to share my experience with people across the world. And you've taken that digital. Most influencers are the other way around. They're on the digital space. They're nothing on the physical, in the real world. So it's like the tail wagging the dog, where they're actually not living that life. They're living the Instagram life to show what's on Instagram. On the other hand, you sharing your life the way it is, your kids on that, your life the way you're living it, what you do when you run your 10Ks, when you're doing these things. So this is what you do for, as a life, and you're just sharing that with people, and to tell people that you can have a healthy life, you can train, you can have a good time with the family, all that together as, as an individual. And the key to that is to understand what works well for you, right? I think a lot of times people try to look at somebody else's lifestyle and try to just ape it as is. How do you help people define for themselves what works for them, right? And in the sense that, like you mentioned, you've got customers from 16 to 64, 74, 75, right? They all have different lifestyles, different challenges. Do you sit down and talk to people and tell them, okay, this will work for you? How does the coaching phenomena work at your organization?
Yeah, good question. So on the influencer piece, I think there's the reason I say I'm not an influencer is because there's now actual college courses and degrees in influencing and social media, whereas I think a lot of social media is around education and entertainment, but a lot of entertainment can be taken for can soon become acting. And I think one thing that I've always tried to be is very authentic, and nothing would ever be an act, which is why when I'm showing my family or my fitness or my work, it's always just like raw and uncut, and this is kind of what it is. And I think people then begin to relate with that, and then they take influence from it. So I'm extremely grateful that, and it should be said, for social media and what I've been able to achieve with Instagram and my following, because it's no doubt been the catalyst for a lot of what the brand has become and a lot of what we now sell as our products. So going back to what we truly believe in with Marchon, which I think is what a lot of people believe in, right? So I don't think we're incredibly unique with this. And I know we have a mutual friend with Ollie Patrick. We speak very much around three key things in our gyms. The first one is that movement quality. So everyone, we believe, whether you're 16 looking just to acquire the skill acquisition of movement, right the way through to someone who's 70 who maybe have lost all of the movement due to corporate life or sedentary life, whatever.
I lost it at 40, man.
We want to make sure that we try and give people back movement, the freedom to move really well. Now, that can look different from person to person based on, like I said, their previous training experience or injuries they might have had. But understanding how we can always try to move the dial somewhat towards near perfect movement for that individual. That's a key kind of pillar of what we're about. The second is strength training. Again, strength and conditioning is widely documented as being super important, both in sport but also in everyday life. Whether it's the everyday tasks, chasing the kids and putting out fires as a husband or wife, or whether it's to go and play recreational sport the weekend. So prioritizing good quality movement and then trying to get people as strong as possible. And ways in which we do that, whether it's a plate, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a barbell, whatever it may be, with the exercises that fits that person, we'll prescribe the right thing for that individual to make sure there's adequate stimulus to make sure they're getting stronger. And like I said, that might look like a 200 kilogram squat. It could be a 5 kilo goblet squat for some people, but movement and strength being two key pillars. And the last one being fitness and trying to improve VO2 max. So I think that kind of trifecta of training principles, and in that kind of order, move really well, get really strong, and work on your fitness. And the three will work in harmony over time. That's something that can fit into anyone's life, whether they're 15 or 70. I want to say anyone's life, but also anyone's goals. Everything becomes infinitely easier and better for your life when you're focusing on those three things. It just might look very different to each person. And when I say different, it could be a different movement, a different exercise, at a different intensity, at a different speed. So once you understand fitness and you understand how to improve those three things, then you can prescribe the right thing for each of those people. Yeah,
and I think what also helps in your case is the authenticity on your Instagram. You're telling people what you can do, and I remember the podcast with Mrs. M, where she speaks about her being very competitive. She says, the guy next to me or the girl next to me doesn't know it's a competition. If it's a finisher, I'm fucking having that, and I remember what did she say? She said, yeah, fuck you, Susan, I'm going to fucking win this. So that's amazing. That's authenticity, that's where I think the difference comes in. Everybody, there's no one size fit all. It's about understanding where you are, where do you want to go, and how you're going to get there. So this coaching bit makes it, easier for people to understand. Now, when you look at people dropping off, right, in a typical normal standard gym, people will enroll for a 12-month period, direct debit and go in. And then people start dropping off like flies, because after the first month, our industry, unfortunately for us, works on something called as sleepers, people who don't come in. You don't want to touch the sleepers because they're giving you money, but they're not turning up to the gym. Personal coaching, or the kind of work you do, you don't want that happening at all. How do you ensure people stay on track? Because it gets very difficult, right? When you're trying to change lifestyle, it takes a toll on you in terms of even mentally, you need to be strong. How do you make sure that people don't drop off? I'm sure you have people who have issues with being able to manage the kind of, schedule you give them, or nutrition you tell them to do, or new movements that people start. So,
yeah, I think it all comes down to enjoyment, right? So for me, it's all well and good me preaching about movement, strength, and improving my fitness, but it's the things that I enjoy because I know the benefits. So I think it actually starts with this alignment for prospective clients coming into your business or coming to work with you, and that will come from the content that you put out there. So the way in which you show up online, the content, the education that you're putting on the different platforms, the way in which you're communicating the results in your local town. When people start to see these things, they start to align with your kind of values and the way you view fitness. I also think the benefits are very well reported of the 3 pillars that we've discussed. So when you start to do all those things, injuries go down, aches and pains begin to go down, confidence begins to build, posture begins to get better, muscle tone begins to come back, body fat begins to decrease. And so long as you have the tools to be able to guide around nutrition and lifestyle, those things, that momentum that people begin to get and the confidence they have in themselves drives enjoyment, because they can start to see the changes. It's when that you're not able to instill those changes with people for whatever reason, you're not able to ask the difficult questions, you're not able to get them to keep showing up, which I think is very rare in a personal training business, because the biggest thing personal trainers should have is clear communication with their clients, a lot of trust. They provide accountability, everything should be scheduled in. And it's almost like a concierge service to get them to the front door, and then when they're in there, they're working in an intimate way with you. So I don't think attendance should be much of an issue within a proper coaching business. If it is, then you're doing something fundamentally wrong. But over time, and at different stages within that journey, and be able to reassess back to the goal when we had that consultation, what we're looking to achieve within this next 3 months of training, whatever it may be, what's coming up in the social calendar that we need to overcome and put strategies and interventions into place. Where are we trying to get in 12 months' time, so we're painting this kind of longer term picture. I think all of those things taken into consideration, you should have someone who's extremely motivated to show up, and they know the moments within their year where they're going to be in their best shape, or they're going to be in their best physical shape, or they're going to be in their best shape with their performance and the numbers that they're lifting, for example. And be able, if things go off track, be able to sit down and have an open conversation again about why they're not being able to do the things with sleep or nutrition, or why they're coming into sessions stressed out and not really concentrating. I think that's like I said, I think that's what people are paying for, is that someone to sit down and have those conversations with them. Sometimes they're difficult conversations, but they enable a coach-client relationship to be one of honesty, trust, and also where both sides of the party are holding up their end of the bargain, so that people can experience the results that they're looking for.
How do you build a team which does something like this? As long as you're one Ollie Marchon, you can do what you want to do. But now you've got 20 trainers, 30 trainers across different facilities. How do you ensure that the same values are going into your coaches?
Just like I said with the content that you might be putting out for prospective clients, the way in which your brand shows up for prospective employees and coaches is equally the same. So when we're putting content out there of our members or of people within our gyms, other coaches are looking and going, I agree with what they're saying there about the way someone should squat, or I love the way they've changed that person's life and that story that client told. I'd love to go and coach there. I love the fact that their coaches are going and doing CPD, 3 weekends of every year. I love the fact that they're doing a team social together and all those kind of things. So I think becoming an employer brand where coaches from the outside look in and go, that looks like somewhere I'd love to go and work. I think it's really important. That's part of building a brand, right? Particularly where you're going to rely heavily on other coaches as you begin to scale. Yeah. I also think then once they're on the inside, real alignment every week with coaches CPD. So every Monday without fail, all of the coaches within our gyms will meet we do it now remotely because we're in multiple locations, but we'll all meet for at least an hour to around 90 minutes. as a collective and go through. We'll case study things that might have come up in a particular gym that week, or we'll pick on a common theme. It might be an exercise that's come into the program. It might be something that one of the coaches has seen or overcome with their cohort that they're managing, and they'll discuss it so that we can always have this shared alignment. We're always looking through the same lens at a common problem, and we're welcoming discussion, healthy discussion around how people would deal with that particular situation. From there will always also be CPD once a week within their own teams, so they're working specifically with then things that are coming up in their gym, exercising the program, some member did this, whatever it may be. So there's always that real alignment, so that the product is always very consistent. And I think where most gyms fall down is they're unable to do it because they either don't have the resource or the know-how to how to run weekly CPD for their coaches, or even the model in which they're employing with the way they employ their coaches. So coaches aren't employed; they're paid for their time. So that trying to get them to show up 1, 2, 3 hours a week outside of their coaching hours, particularly if you're not going to pay them, they're not interested.
Yeah.
And that's why the employed model for staff it's super important for gyms like ours. But you have to do it all. You have to go all in on it. So that it's not just the coaching hours that are important, it's the ancillary things around managing the members within your gym, and we call it cohort management, where you're talking about nutrition, lifestyle and motivation, but you're also then having a period of time where the coaches aren't working with members, they're working with themselves in their team to drive standards and I guess drive the product forward.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have people who are on your roles. One of the things that, obviously UP Fitness, Nick Mitchell does the same thing. He has his own trainers on his board, on his payroll. And I think that's something that's very UK problem, I would say, where everybody's self-employed. And it's a different chase altogether, because if you're self-employed, you're just trying to earn money to first pay the rent to the gym, or you're trying to do hours in the gym. And then there's no alignment between the gym and the coach themselves. And I think our industry is divided into two very different, while we're all in the fitness industry, it's completely divided into one being like I said, a real estate play, and one being a fitness play. And the fitness play has to be with trainers being employed, trainers living the values of the company, the products. I remember that question somebody asked you, and this is how lost people are, man. I remember PerformX, somebody asked you this question, Ollie, should we be taking on High Rocks? Should we become a High Rocks gym? Will it help me get in business? That's a wrong question to ask, because you don't have your product nailed. Now, what's your advice to people where you say, should I become a PerformX gym? Should I become a, High Rocks gym? Should I become a CrossFit affiliate? Should I become this affiliate? When do you do that? And should you do that? And I remember, I didn't even know that you do High Rocks training till the time you said. So you've never used that High Rocks brand. I mean, you were training people for that. People would come in and say, I want to do High Rocks at some point of time. You said, we can train you for that. But you never piggybacked on a High Rocks name per se. Marchon was first, and then you can bolt on other things. At what stage in your life as a gym owner should you start looking at these collaborations or affiliations or piggybacking on brands? And how does it help, if it helps at all?
It's a great question too. I think, firstly, I think CrossFit, High Rocks, all of those things is going to be really relevant to a percentage of your membership base. But I think if I look at the typical personal training gym, there's maybe 10, 15, some gyms maybe more, % of your members that are super competitive that want to go do the High Rocks thing. The rest of them, maybe they like the idea of it, and maybe they're 12 months away from gaining the confidence. So I do think having different things, if you look at your membership base, having different buckets that you can put them into, where you can take them out of the gym and you can show them that what they're doing daily, weekly within your gym can be of benefit outside the four walls of it. And for some of them, that might just be their ability to, do everyday house tasks with a little bit more energy, or do the gardening at the weekend. For others, it could be competing in High Rocks 2 days a year. But I think the first thing is to build your training philosophies and your brand around things that you are really passionate about and that drive people to get results. I think you need to be careful jumping on the bandwagon with a few of these things. And I don't think it's a bandwagon in the sense that it's going to be gone. I think there's a lot of good to come out of CrossFit and High Rocks. But I think you shouldn't put their brand ahead of your brand and ahead of what your trying to build, because when Hyrox gets sold or moves on, or CrossFit doesn't continue to grow at the rate in which it has done in the past, you then begin to be on that sinking ship, or on that ship that's going further and further away from the values and what you try to create. And you also dismiss, like I said, the large portion of people within your gym who aren't looking to compete in Hyrox. So yeah, I think if you value, like I said, those three pillars, which everyone should: quality movement, strength and fitness, you should be able to retrofit people into going doing Hyrox, doing 10Ks, doing Tough Mudders, doing whatever it is that they want to go and do. And then you can make it some sort of gym incentive. Like I said, going back to those key moments within the year, where you can highlight that in the calendar, you can get that group of members together, and you can put on some extra classes for them that can upskill them in certain things around Hyrox. But the majority of the training should be readying them anyway.
Yeah, and we had this problem in India. Back in the day, Ironman became extremely big in India, and you had a couple of gyms who said, what, this is a good time, good opportunity, because they didn't have focus on what they were doing. They said, good opportunity to kind of train people for Ironman, make a name for yourselves. And then the Ironman, the craze of Ironman died down in India. And now they were perceived as an Ironman gym. So the normal gym goer is already out of the door. He's not there. The Ironman is no longer trending in India. So the guys who want to train for Ironman are not there. And now the gyms have to completely reinvent themselves, because they were relying so much on Ironman. And they thought that that's where the business is going to come from.
Yeah, I think if we look at Hyrox in particular, they've said it at the top in Hyrox. Hyrox is for the everyday person. They want to go after the people who aren't your physical, elite. They're more concerned about the mass market, mass participation, everyday person. So if your gym, irrespective of being a Hyrox affiliate and putting on Hyrox classes, isn't getting the everyday person stronger and fitter to go and do a fitness event, then you're doing something wrong on the very basis of what you started.
Yeah. Ollie, I wanted to touch on the supplement business. I've been seeing a lot of your posts around the MARCHON Supplements. Talk us through what made you get into supplements, because you somebody who's always been food first.
Yeah.
I've heard from you a lot. And then when does food stop and supplementation start, or how do you kind of merge them together and say that this is what you require? And I know you require supplements, and I do take a lot of supplements, but food first is extremely important. And I love the way you say it. You tell people that while you run a supplement company, you just tell people supplements are not for everyone. If you need it, you take it. If you don't need it, don't take it. And that coming from somebody who owns a supplement brand is a great thing, because again, you're educating people. But how was this idea born as MARCHON Supplements?
Yeah, I think for me, again, I'm lucky that supplements was born out of 10 years of everything I did prior. So it's not something where I need to try and ram it down people's throats to be like, this is what you need, because it's quite frankly not. And I think, again, anyone that follows me on social media will show that I'm often posting my food, whilst I'm also posting the supplements that I'm taking. I'm often posting my food. So we very much are, and everyone that's kind of come into that business, Liam Holmes, our head of nutrition, he is very much a food first person. The reason we started the business was a couple of reasons, really. The entrepreneur in me back in during the pandemic, when the gyms were closed, we didn't have any. I felt as though my business was very fragile, because when the gyms closed, I didn't really have anything that was tangible. Now we of course put a lot of effort and time into our online business, which was also started in 2016, in fact prior to the gym, and was accelerating through COVID because of our ability to send programming around the world. But I didn't have anything tangible, and I wanted to have some sort of physical good. That was, like I said, that was just scratching the entrepreneurial itch within me. I'd also worked in the supplement space for the last 8 years, helping brands grow, being the face of a lot of brands from an education standpoint, helping them with blog posts from a content standpoint, and also there were always shared values for what I was about and what those supplements had been about. And my time within professional sport, supplementation, brands like Maxi Muscle, which I went on to be a bit of a face for, were huge back then. So I'd had this kind of affection for the supplement industry, because I'd always been taking them from a young age, and I'd worked with a number of those brands. So it was this perfect storm of wanting something tangible, working with these brands, and then at the time I had a nutrition coaching business, which two girls that worked for the business ran for me, and they would often come up against sticking points with people with their nutrition strategies around convenience, around timing, around ways to overcome the fact that food wasn't readily available, or at the times in which they needed the nutrients they didn't want to eat, and X, Y, and Z. So they would often advise on supplementation. So I just thought, well, let's try and do it ourselves. Not really knowing what I was getting myself in for, knowing that the market was heavily saturated. But it was something that I felt like the other areas of my business were all in place, and it was something that I really wanted to try and add in. And it kind of fit in the overriding goal of trying to have this daily MARCHON touch point in someone's life. Geographically confined to being able to come to one of our gyms, that was always going to be a constraint for us. Perhaps not wanting to use our training programs, that was always going to be a constraint for us. But the ability now to open up a bag of whey protein and put it in your porridge or drink an electrolyte drink, it just meant that the MARCHON message could kind of grow, and it added another entry point into our business. So I did some research. I was able to connect up with a few manufacturers, and we sort of started to build our products. And at the start of it was very much the creatine, the whey protein, the casein, stuff that was heavily commoditized and anyone could get their hands on. But we wanted to really over-index on flavoring, and we wanted what the brand stood for, not just to be about that bag of protein, but the training session that you were going to go and do, or the way in which you were going to view your sleep hygiene and those kind of things. So it was all about education around the things that helped you within 24 hours. And then more recently, as Liam's come more heavily involved in the business as a consultant to begin with, but now as our head of education, it's about innovation, how we can bring products to the market, because people are demanding way more from themselves with their fitness. People are looking to run further, run faster, lift more. In some instances, sleep is becoming harder to come by. People are throwing way more stress at themselves. So supplements become far more necessary for certain people. And I've certainly found as I'm getting older and I'm demanding a lot from my body, I'm using supplementation a little bit more to bolster protein intake, to improve my hydration status, to make sure that, like with omegas and vitamin D, those things, those staples, that I'm just trying to keep all boxes ticked. So that's kind of the
but it's a very, very, very highly competitive market. And extremely saturated, like you mentioned. How would you be able to differentiate yourself? Obviously, there's one part which is, anything you sell under the MARCHON brand will sell because it comes with the brand credibility of what you've been able to achieve. But in a market like this, you've got you've got billion-dollar firms who you're competing with. How are you going to you look at that? And I'm sure you realized very, very early as you started supplements, it's a way fucking bigger market than the gym business. So do you see that, two questions here. One, do you see that the supplement business is going to become a separate business, way larger than the other businesses? Because I'm sure it'll scale faster than the gym business, because it's at the end of the day, it's a product. And how would you compete with others like say a MyProtein, which is like a mass market brand and everybody knows about them. They have athletes who are influencers with them, and so you got a product now. The similar, like whey protein is whey protein for most people, right? Why would I take a MARCHON protein, and what's your philosophy behind this?
Yeah, good question. So to answer part one, I think the supplements can definitely eclipse the rest of the business. I think the growth and the speed in which we're experiencing it, I think it's certainly been a lot easier to grow those type of revenues than it has been with the gyms.
And that's also because you're a brand now.
Yeah, I think it's a head start, right?
Yeah. So if I were to start a supplement business today without any brand name, without the credibility of MARCHON, you're absolutely fucked, I'm telling you. People have failed. So many people have failed in this business. So you have to give credit to yourself for that. Yeah,
so I think that's probably brings me on to answer part two, is where I think we can compete is, look, obviously tasting great is not incredibly unique, but that's something that we always want to try and prioritize. Like, there's a lot of really bad tasting cheap products on the market, so taste is going to be the biggest thing for us, but also some innovation with products. So yeah, sure, whey protein, creatine, some of these things are commoditized, but with what we're doing we've got a new multivitamin come out, we've got an endurance product coming out. We've got a number of different things now, because there's a lot of research that's emerging. People are pushing this industry forward, nootropics, adaptogens, things that weren't really spoke about before or weren't mass market. People are beginning to think about more like, how can I improve cognition? How can I improve other things outside of just trying to make my muscles bigger? So there is some innovation in new product development, which is really exciting for us. But I think it goes back to brand. Why do people now invest into certain brands? It's because of the people behind them. And I think if you look at some of the biggest brands in the world now, they are not faceless brands. There's founders or influential people that sit behind them that are spreading a message and selling products off the back of the message, but the message is something that people can relate to and that their audience is aligned with. And ultimately you're selling a feeling. So for me, it's a bag of whey protein and it's a vanilla flavor. And when I say we're selling a feeling, it's not necessarily the initial feeling that you're going to get when you drink the protein, but it's about that that being a part of something. It's the whey protein and the training session and the mindset towards that day and the way in which you wake up and attack things on the front foot. It's all of those things that I think is what MARCHON Supplements and MARCHON Training kind of represents. So yeah, I think brand is the thing that we've heavily indexed on and the thing we'll try and leverage while still trying to create affordable, great tasting products with efficacious dosages with ingredient profiles that are reputable and well researched and that we know can make a difference.
Yeah, you talk a lot about research and so tell me what's under dev right now. What's it that we're going to see next from MARCHON Supplements?
So there's a product that I believe will be the world's greatest multivitamin.
Nice.
That's what we're going to use in our marketing. It's a combination of a number of things, but ashwagandha is one of them. Magnesium is another. B12. Calling it an advanced multivitamin is a bit of an understatement, really, but it's something that I think is going to be a daily staple for everyone every day, and everyone can take it and experience benefits. So that's really exciting. And then we have a product which is going to enhance VO2 max. So we've spoke at a bit of length today around the importance of improving VO2 max as a predictor of longevity. So we've got adaptogens within that, and we have a beetroot extract as well. So it's for people that are looking to compete in things like high rocks or a 10K or a half marathon, anywhere where performance is really needed to be enhanced. And it's a product that you'll take intermittently throughout the year as you build towards that competition. So yeah, those are two that are on the kind of horizon the next 6 weeks.
Nice. Ollie, one of the things I've noticed in the UK, and I've spent a substantial amount of time here, but UK doesn't have too many hustlers. You're one of the few hustlers I know in the country who's going all out. You just at it 24/7. Now, how do you get this DNA of being a hustler? And how do you grow? You're surrounded with people who are who are not that ambitious. And people are like, okay, fine. If you were to do a survey, most people would rather have more holidays than have more money, right? And people are not hustling. People don't want to work, don't want to stretch. How do you keep yourself going?
Good question. I think I'll preface this by saying, being a hustler, if that's the term we're going to use, is not necessarily the thing I'd suggest for everyone, right? I think you've got to be predisposed to try and do it, or a real sense of why you want to try and stretch yourself and push harder, because not everyone is cut out for it, and that's also absolutely fine. I think I've done a lot of work over the years to work out why I am how I am, because sometimes it's not. It can sometimes be, what's the word I'm looking for? Detrimental, right, to your own physical and mental well-being at times, but sometimes you're predisposed to be that way. So I think a lot of it comes back to kind of childhood and the way I was kind of brought up, and the early influences around the way my dad used to work and things that I was just interested in. People who I used to idolize in the sporting world, the YouTubes I used to watch of athletes back in the day and what they used to put into things, and how hard they worked. I was heavily influenced by that. I think the first injury I ever got as a rugby player at 18, once I'd signed a professional contract, and I snapped my knee, in effect, did my ACL, my cruciate and lateral collateral ligament, and was told that I hadn't done enough in that first 9 months of my contract for them to want to keep me on whilst I was injured. And I think that just being told you haven't done enough, I was like, fuck. So I rested on my laurels too much. I took too much for granted. So I thought, if ever I'm in an opportunity where I'm on the path to be what I want to try and become, I'm never going to leave a stone unturned again. So I think there was a couple of key things that happened early on in life that meant that I was always going to get my head down and get after it. I also think that I take a lot of influence outside of the UK, because you're right, in the UK there aren't many people that are pushing themselves. But whereas if you go to America, or if you surround yourself with people in the UK, which I'm very lucky to be friends with, that are pushing themselves, you get the rub and you start to see the things that they're doing, and I think you begin to level up your thought process. You see that there's no real glass ceiling on what you're doing. There are other people out there working way harder and doing way more. And I also think I need to give credit to the people that have come into the business. Like I said, being an employer brand where you're looking to attract talent, a lot of the talent that's come into our business has the same work ethic, same mentality. Often people are in the office now before me and leave later, or they're working weekends. And whilst it's not, like I say, it's not always conducive with being the best thing for all people, as it comes to like work-life balance, or balance being the operative word. There's times when it's a necessity to try and break out into the next level of business or the next level of thinking, or gain some momentum whilst there's been a period of stagnation. So yeah, it's a few of those things. Early influences, my kind of what I want MARCHON to become now that I've seen its potential, and even hearing the likes of yourselves, who's you've been this game a long time, and you've seen a lot of successful businesses and had a lot of success yourself. To hear you say that you look at our business, having not really known much about what we do, to say that we could become one of these next big global brands, it's like things like that make me go, if someone else is seeing that about my business, and I also see it too, it would be a crying shame if we don't try and push for that potential. Given that that's what we want to achieve.
You're driving a high performance culture, and this word culture, my dad always says this. The word culture comes from yogurt, curd. You take a spoon of curd and put it in milk, and next day morning everything is curd. So and that's because that's the culture. So that one spoon is you, which is you've created that high performance culture within yourself, within your team, where people say let's push the envelope. When I see my founder so passionate about something. And you can't lie all the time. People can have a mask on themselves, but when you're working with somebody 24/7, you know what they stand for. You could say I stand for this, but if I'm working for you and I know you don't, I'll say fucking he's lying. And it's very, very evident in a lot of places. There is one face that you want to show the world, and there's one face which people in your team see. And in your case, I've realized one thing: everybody who works with you knows what you stand for, and what you stand for is what you show on. So even if it's pushing things, even if it's disagreeing with people, you say it on the face. And I think I love that about the way your brand has grown. Now, keeping all this in context, how do you hire? Because not everybody wants to work in a very high performance culture. Also, not everybody is good enough to be a part of this. I'm sure a lot of people want to apply and be a part of the MARCHON team. Where do you get people from? What's your hiring process like?
Yeah, we've not always got it right. There's been a number of times where we've hired and people have kind of come and gone, which was a lesson that was tough to learn at the start, because when you're growing a business, and particularly the first couple of people that come to work from you create this very tight-knit bond, and you're all in on the mission together. And then when things don't go the way you expect them to go with potential employees or people that work with you because they leave, or there's misalignment over a period of time, you take it quite personally as a founder. So I think that's a really it's an important thing for people to note, is that the goal is to bring people in who fit a particular job role that align with the values first and foremost, and that can you can nurture and build. So the goal of a company is to really try and develop its people. So that's something that we've always really focused on, and in turn that person will give all they can for your company. And if ever there becomes a time when it's not now the right thing for you or them, I think it's also fine just to accept that people can move on in a better place. So we now are very lucky that we have a lot of people apply to come and work within our business. We're extremely lucky in that sense. And we're very much about trying to find the right person. It's not so much now about the CV or their experience, because we've put everything internal. Like I said, this continued development pathway that we have within our business, particularly when we're talking about coaches. We need experts in the marketing space and in the creative space. Like, we don't really have time now where the brand is to bring on junior people and for them to try and learn. There may be some apprenticeships that we can do, but we need real experts in that space. With the coaching game, because we have I call it a top-heavy coaching team. We have a very experienced senior coaching team because people have been with us a number of years. We can afford to bring in people who are a little bit more junior, because in coaching, as long as you have the right attitude and you have the right work ethic and you're smart in a fitness sense and you're willing to take on the information, you can accelerate your learning very quickly in this type of environment. And I think that's what's missed with a lot of coaches, is that apprenticeship. It's the trying to get the coaching hours on the gym floor, building the capacity to go back to back from 6 a.m. through to midday, building the ability to understand how to communicate with the 16-year-old versus a 74-year-old, understanding movement and what it looks like for different people. So now, when we're looking through CVs, I don't look at CVs, I look at a video. I ask people to send in a video, 2-minute video, and I'm looking at how they conduct themselves, how they talk about themselves, the confidence they show, the the understanding of what MARCHON is and how they could fit into it and how they're trying to sell themselves to us. That's the most important bit for us. And then from that video, I'll sit down and have a Zoom with them, or we'll invite them down. It will be a very immersive experience. We'll get them down for a day. They'll spend the day with us. They'll do some coaching. We'll take them out for lunch. It's to really get to know people as well as we can, as quickly as we can, all their hopes and dreams that they want to achieve as a fitness professional. And once we know all those things, and if they come across as the right person, then we can make a offer to them. And we've got a very clear pathway for where we want to try and take people from this kind of junior coach role right the way through to a senior coach. And so long as we keep trying to open gyms and grow, the gym operation, then I think we can retain a lot of our coaches now for a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned apprentice. We've lost that. We've absolutely lost it. And I think people forget that the first 4 or 5 years of their career, they have to be like a sponge. They have to be work magnets. Attract as much work, learn as much as you can. People are chasing money. The moment you pass out of a course, you want to earn a lot of money. You want to start earning 4 or 5 grand from the first month. And this thought process of I am still learning is absolutely gone out of the window. People are looking at, like pilots. You say, you're a good pilot when you've done 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 hours. Not when you've done fucking 2 hours on the plane and you say, I'm an experienced pilot. A person who calls himself a coach after 3 months of passing out is a fucking dickhead, because he's not a coach. He's just about learning right now. He's not handled a client, a customer. He's just got theoretical knowledge. And getting people today who want to learn is so difficult. I'm happy to pay people what they want, provided they're able to do this thing well, which is learn. The first 3 to 5 years are all about learning. What's been your experience with people when you hire freshers, who come in as coaches, and where do you hire from? I mean, it's so difficult to hire good coaches.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 values for our business. It's live, learn, and lead. So learn is actually a value that's, we talk about it every time we meet up as a company. In fact,
learn, and sorry?
Lead. And we have value champions. So each quarter in our company, there'll be a value champion. So there'll be someone that has to live out the value of learn. And they will have to report back at the end of the quarter to the rest of the entire company, what they learned about themselves, what they learned about the value, what it means to them, ways in which they kind of lived it out. And so we're constantly trying to, instill this idea of learning. But it also then means for us, we need to put aside separate budget and time and resource for that person to go and develop themselves. And like I said, the daily and weekly cadence of our meetings and things, we need to make sure there's always this kind of learning culture. In terms to answer your question, I identified very early on that the level of coaching coming through, or the level of coaches coming through in the education, was quite poor. So we developed our own education business. So a lot of the ecosystem that we've created at MARCHON is to try and create this kind of flywheel of the way in which we can keep the company growing and building. And education was one thing that we identified very early on that we needed. So the PFCA is our education arm, and we deliver qualifications from level 3 all the way up to what we call a master coach. And that period between 0 and 3 years is what we call the apprenticeship. Now, obviously, creating an education business, maybe 5% of those coaches will be the right sort of people that can come into our business. And as you come into our business, you realize very early on if it's the right place for you, and we realize very early on whether you're the right person for us. And actually, we can realize it from that very first video that I mentioned. And soon, if we did make the wrong hire, it would come out in the wash very quickly that they weren't right, and we'd try and move them on, because you're surrounded by people who will think the same, act the same, all with their own uniqueness, of course, but it's a melting pot of talent here. Whether it's the creative team right through to the coaches, everyone is on that same mission, sharing those values, part of the bigger vision, and they're all trying to master their craft. So if we had someone, even in your 0 to first year of coaching, so long as you're trying to master your craft, so long as there's that intent and the effort, you're coming to the weekends, you're coming to the CPD, you're showing up, you're putting in the work, you'd last around here. But it's the people that begin to cut corners and do the bare minimum that would soon, you'd notice it, and other people would start to notice it, and it would be an uncomfortable place to try and hang on if that was the case.
I remember my first episode, of my first podcast was with Dave Wright, the founder of My Zone. And I said, if I wanted to be Dave Wright, I would actually pay for it. What I would do is, I'll pay you, just employ me to work here, to see how you work, how you made it so big. And do you see that today, where the young generation says, what, I see Ollie Marchon, he's built a fucking amazing business. He's got a cult following. I just want to work with them, man. And I want to build my own business 3 years, 5 years from now. But I want to learn from the best today. Do you see people who come in and say, you know what, fuck it, man, I don't bother about the salary. I will obviously get paid less than, if I'm working for somebody versus if I'm doing my own coaching, and if I do very well, I'll obviously make more. So it's like a risk reward kind of a ratio. But do you see people who are doing that? Because a lot of people don't understand building an organization is not a lifestyle business. Lifestyle business is where you're earning cash and you're spending cash, buying the Rolexes, buying those cars, or buying whatever, and running the show. And your priority is right now just to live in the moment and not build an organization. Now, when you meet young people, do you see people looking at the long-term vision, or do you think people are very, very myopic in their approach towards building their own career, their life, or their business if they want to do it?
I think younger people, in terms of like years, so the younger age people, I think they're fewer and far between. There are certainly some older coaches who have either been through the process now of tried to go out and do their own thing, or they've been employed by a number of businesses that are willing to now knuckle down and really focus on the next 3 to 5 years of their career because of the springboard that Marchon can give them. Like I said, we're one of the hottest, I guess, coaching brands in the UK, so that anyone that wears that badge will immediately gain a perception that they're of more authority and credibility, but also behind closed doors, they're also going to earn the stripes and do the work to make sure that expectation and reality are met. But there are a couple of younger people. I mean, Sam, who sat in the room, is an example of someone who, 23 years old or 22 years old, whatever age he was when he came to us, expressed interest in getting a role. I said, fine, come and see me this weekend. We've got an event on. I think we had a gym game day or some sort of event, and he drove from Bournemouth to the event, shot the content. There are people who do go above and beyond, but particularly the younger people, they're fewer and far between because of, I think, the influence of online coaching and what people expect the industry to give them before they've even given anything back to the industry. But I think that's why we have such an issue now with the turnover of coaches that come into the industry and then leave. But I also think the industry needs to do more to make apprenticeships more attractive. And let's be real, like, it's hard to live these days with the cost of living and everything else. So unless you have the support of family or whatever it may be, as a young coach coming into this needing to earn money, it can be difficult. So I don't want to sit on my high horse and say, everyone should go and work for free for the first couple of years of their personal training career. But so there needs to be more outlets or more possibilities and I guess a pathway created by gyms or by networks of gyms to be able to bring these people in and give them what they need from an experience standpoint, as well as them being able to put food on the table.
Yeah, but I think it cuts both ways. If you're good, people will bend backwards for you to stay. It's so difficult to find good people, man, and to retain them, because there are so, everybody's competing for that talent, and like you rightly said, it's not the resume. It's the person, their attitude, and you can make out, will they survive in this kind of a thing? Are they here for the long run? And obviously online business has changed a lot for people. People, I think if I go back to, the COVID time when the world was hit with this, people migrated onto online training, right? And then when they did, they saw a lot of money. And now that pipeline is dried up. People are back into the gyms, and suddenly the coach who was making money online has gone absolutely, he's got no clients. And I know a lot of people like that who had 50 clients during COVID, and they're down to 5 now. And honestly, they don't know what's happened, because they didn't even know what happened when they got the 50. So it was, either ways, they had no fucking idea what was happening in their life. Now, I know you run an online business. I've seen the 8-week program that you run. It's doing, people are talking a lot about that. Could you run us? How did you, when you did that online program, your first online program, what were you thinking? And what do you see as the future for the online training business that you've got?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, the entrepreneur in me going, how do I ring fence some of the things that I've done or that I'm doing, and how do I create a business that's a little bit more robust and resilient to things like this online, COVID, and I have got clients, haven't got clients. So when I finished playing my rugby career, I'd been building this personal training career alongside it, and I had this studio, which I mentioned earlier, I'd invested £5,000 into, and it was a one-to-one studio, this cattle shed. I then decided I was at this crossroads with my career as a fitness professional, but also as a rugby player, which was my primary kind of identity. I decided to go over to the west coast of America because I knew the fitness industry was very forward thinking. I needed a break from my surroundings here. And there was an opportunity to play some part-time rugby in Santa Monica whilst also just travel around and experience fitness. So when I went over there, I started doing social media actually, because I felt the reason that I did it, or I guess the impetus that I then had, was because prior to that, in the rugby changing rooms, I thought that if I used social media, I was going to get the piss taken out of me by the rugby boys, the banter. But I thought, which was stupid really, but I thought by being over the west coast of America, I now had this cushion, this ocean between me that meant I was a little bit more protected to use social media. Of course, they could obviously take the piss out of me online, but yeah, that's why I started using social media, and I was like, I'm going to start to use social media, but for a purpose of now trying to get my programming out there. So I'm no longer coaching people in person. I'm going to start to put content on social media, educate my audience, start to create this persona of this online coach, and then see if I can start to market and sell some products to these people, which is very much the classic Google Sheets. It was writing someone's program, giving them the nutrition, and doing these check-ins. And I started to build a bit of a one-to-one online coaching business. When I came back from America, shortly after that is when we started the MARCHON Athletic Gym, and alongside MARCHON Athletic, we started what we called MARCHON Performance, which was this online version of what we were doing in the gym. The demographic was slightly younger. It was just using my online audience, Instagram, and we were beginning to essentially monetize them with programming. So we used a third-party training app called True Coach. We would write programs. It was called the Functional Physiques 12-week program. And then we built the first 12 weeks, the second 12 weeks, the third 12 weeks, and the fourth 12 weeks. So we had a year's worth of programs that people could come on, buy this online program, and then work through a year of it. Now, at the time, people's buying behaviors, this one-time purchase, it was fixed length. They knew what they were in for. They could see the physique and the training that I and other people had achieved, and they sort of bought into it. And then but what I was seeing with the gym is I had this subscription reoccurring revenue model of small group personal training. And I was like, that business seems far more sustainable. There's cash flow. I can see how to try and grow it. So with Functional Physiques being this one-off payment, I then started to put in group programming alongside it, which was a subscription model. Some people then bought into this idea of being part of something for longer than a fixed length program. So we had these two models running alongside each other. Within time, more effort and energy and marketing was placed in the subscription model online, this group programming thing. It was more scalable, it was affordable for people, it built community, it showed them that training wasn't just about 12 weeks, it was about a longer term mindset towards it. Cut a long story short, when the pandemic happened, obviously everyone went online. We used this time very productively to grow influence, personal brand, build community, improve the system, improve everything from the marketing to the product to the programming to its delivery to the connection to the audience. And off the back of COVID, we'd created a pot of money, and we decided to invest into an app. I'd always wanted to build an app. The idea of it always was incredibly exciting, but also daunting because of the know-how, but also the capital investment put into it. Mm-hmm. And by chance, again, a bit like the coffee story, I guess, of the people giving you free coffee, someone online who was one of our members really loved the program. He loved what it had done to him. He loved the brand. Reached out to me and said, look, I work in tech. I'm on the program. I'd love to help you try and design an app. I think we could do this better. And I ignored that person for a period of time because everyone during COVID was trying to sell you a digital solution to your business. But he was persistent, and this goes back to how do we end up with some of the employees that we have? It's because people show that that extra, going above and beyond. They're persistent. You can see they're passionate about it. And he hit me up with a couple of messages on different platforms, email, WhatsApp, whatever else. And we eventually met for a coffee, talked through it, decided to go ahead with it. So we designed this app. We then went out to market, had it developed by a development house in Canada. Invested something like $175,000 at the time. I was like, what are we doing? But we launched the app with 700 subscribers at the time. I think today we're 2,600. Wow. And we've built out a number of different programs now, these group recurring revenue kind of programs where we're trying to fit programming for different archetypes. So we have the Hierarchs program, we have people for body composition, we have people for functional fitness, we have people for CrossFit. And then the 8-week program that you mentioned just there, we then came back 4 or 5 years later back to a fixed length program, which we just released 8 weeks ago. We're in the 8th week right now. And I don't know why we waited so long, because what we saw was 600 people signed up when we launched that program. And this was heavily around aesthetics. It was a body, we call it the summer shred. So it was about trying to drop body fat. We combined a lot of nutrition resource and support with that. We're giving a weekly call with our head of nutrition, Liam. So there's a huge amount of value that's gone into that product.
And what is the price point, Ollie?
So that was actually very cheap. We launched that at £149, and the initial launch we were giving £79 credit for supplements as well. So you pay £149, you get £79 back to spend on supplements. Yeah. And we had 600 people sign up. The interesting thing with that is 600 people signed up. 450 of those people were brand new users. And of the 450, new users, so weren't current. So 600 people signed up. 150 of them were already on a group program. So they just bought this product alongside it. 450 were new users, and of the 400 of the 450 had never even created a profile with us before. Now, we have been going now with online for 4 or 5 years. We've had the app for at least 2, and our kind of gold standard thing that we're constantly kind of marketing is a 7-day free trial. And there'll often be we'll often do 2-week free or a month free or whatever, various different offers infrequently throughout the year, but there's offers available. And 400 people of the 600 had never even taken out a 7-day free trial, and they'd all come from organic.
Wow.
So they follow our content, follow my stories and anyone else's stories, observe and absorb everything that we do. But because of their own buying behaviors, they'd never even taken a 7-day free trial. And also because the product market fit, they were into the words Summer Shred Challenge obviously meant something to them. The emphasis was on dropping body fat, dieting, nutrition, support, etc. And they decided to sign up, which I thought was a real kind of aha moment in our kind of online journey where, as much as we're into performance training and movement and strength and VO2 max, for a lot of people it's just, I want to be in shape and feel good about myself. I want to be in shape for summer. I want to get shredded. So it taught us a few things about how we're going to construct our offering going forward.
Ollie, I want to go back to the PFCA. It's a very respected training organization. All trainers want to be a part of it. People talk about it, the quality of coaching that you've done. I know it was born out of your wanting to have coaches for yourself, but if you could run us through the journey, how did you build that academy and who do you work with? And, because I've heard wonderful things about the course that you conduct, and probably you also have a process of getting people on board. I don't know the entire thing, but if you could explain more about the PFCA.
Yeah, so it was born out of wanting to have an academy that we could pick from, but also I truly believe in a rising tide lifting all boats. So I wanted, I've been able to break free of just being a personal trainer, right? Or break free of being able to last past the first 7 months. So I wanted to pay that forward and give it back to people, as did my business partner, Jens. So we started it as a company called the Stronger Coaches Academy. That was the first iteration. And we we had about 2 months of Sundays. So every Sunday, it was the only day we had spare. We both had young families at the time. We were both working Monday through to Saturday with our personal training businesses. But on Sundays, we would sit down and we would sit together on our plyo boxes in my first gym with plyo boxes in front of us and a laptop and a camera, and we would just talk to the camera about everything that we knew, and we created this kind of syllabus, and we had different modules, and it was all stuff that an amalgamation of stuff that we'd learnt from other educators, from different mentorships and what have you. And it was a kind of business and theoretical and practical mentorship that we put together. It was 12 weeks long. It was quite a premium price point, but we sold it using our to our followers, and I think we sold 60 places in the first year. So we made something like £80,000. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's great, right? So we put that money straight back into the business, and we thought, how do we take this to more people? How do we scale it? We needed more awareness. We needed something that was maybe more affordable. We needed different price points with different products, all the things that most businesses then begin to start to think about. Rebranded as the Professional Fitness Coaches Association. We very much were looking to only work with coaches who had already been qualified, and we came up with this functional fitness coaching course. The rise of functional fitness was becoming more prevalent, and we built these courses out, which was understanding human movement, understanding the principles behind strength training, and improving your aerobic capacity.
Which year was this?
It was the pandemic then happened, so It was 2020.
Okay.
So the pandemic happened, and we were recording this course, and our goal was to lead with education, and on the back end of that, look after them from a business standpoint and some sort of mentorship, B2B, coach to coach mentorship. The pandemic happened, and of course, all coaches were looking for mentorship, how to navigate the situation. Okay. So we actually then we released the mentorship before we released the course. So we had this group of personal trainers that we were then mentoring, and we were just basically helping them manage through the situation that was kind of presented to them, different tactics and ways in which they could try and retain clients, even market to clients, how they could, coach online without the use of gyms and all that kind of stuff. And over time, the pandemic kind of had been and gone. We then released our course, but we realized that the sorts of coaches coming to us just were ill-equipped. The knowledge base wasn't there. Even the desire to want to try and learn and work through a course was not even there. That had been lost. So we went back to the level 3, and then we started to build out our level 3, not knowing that the level 3 standards that we had to teach were the same standards that everyone was trying to teach. You had some people teaching it in 1 day, some people teaching it in 2 years, some people teaching it in a lunchtime and selling it for £100, some people selling it for £4,000 and it being a 6-week course. It was the Wild West, but it was stuff that we were beginning to learn. And we soon realized that the course in which we had to try and teach wasn't the course that was going to get coaches to the standard that we need them to get with for us to be able to sell them our courses thereafter. So we're like, oh shit, we're going to have to create our own course. And then we were then like, okay, we need to teach our own course, the course that maps to the standards. And we need to try and do it in a time frame that's conducive with people getting qualified, with having all the right skill sets at the right price point, etc. So there was various different iterations of that, but eventually we landed on a level 3 course that we could deliver to people. We delivered it, like I said, 2 courses at the same time, our one and the one that maps to the standards. And then we had this network of coaches that then sat within the PFCA with a view that we then had different courses for them. So the next one we called Grow, which was a business and theory kind of combined, that kind of accelerated you on to be able to, gain clients, market, sell, retain, improve products, etc. And then onto the kind of marquee courses that we have, which is the FFC courses. And during that period as well, we had a number of those early personal trainers in 2020 that went on to become gym owners, and that wanted to follow the inspiration of what Marchon had given them. So we had a number of people then that we were mentoring on a B2B basis, but as gym owners. So we decided to separate the company then, and that's where we had our Gym Owners Network, which is essentially business coaching for gym owners, and the PFCA is then education for personal trainers.
Nice.
And as it stands today, we probably deliver around 500 certifications at the moment a year.
Wow.
As a mixture of level 3 personal training and also functional fitness coaching accreditations. We've built out a functional fitness coaching level 2, which is in person. It's a week long. It's immersive, week long in person. We take all the theory that we learn in FFC and all the tools that we give people, and we actually see what their coaching is like, because that's also the biggest thing for people. It's like, it's all well and good at taking on the knowledge and having that theory, but it's your ability to actually command a room, deliver it with confidence and clarity. And then we also do seminars. So we'll travel around the UK, and we've been further afield. The next one's in Manchester in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're there for 2 days. We focus on the principles of functional fitness coaching, and then we also focus on small group personal training and everything that's kind of associated with that.
You work very closely with CIMSPA as well, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do with them?
So we soon learned, it was our own kind of naivety of that world. We thought we'd come into it and we could build our own courses and we could just sell to people, which you can, right? Anyone with, I guess, strong personal brand can develop their own education and sell it.
Yeah.
But when we started to work a little bit more with the level 3 stuff, and that's where we knew we could have the biggest impact, is like the people that are fresh coming into this, the students that want to take a career in fitness, they were being let down by all the other providers, or a lot of the other providers. The level 3, they were, like I said, anywhere between £100 and £3,500, but you were learning nothing. So in part it was the education provider's fault, but in part it was also the standards. We didn't think the standards fit the modern day requirements for a fitness professional. So we got in contact with CIMSPA, and we were trying to understand a little bit more about how that world works. And they were extremely helpful, and we built a lot of good trust with them, because they could see the work that we were doing, and they could see why we were doing it, and also they could see it was coming from a place of genuine integrity and authenticity and for wanting to give back. So they invited us into a couple of meetings on their kind of advisory board, and there was people from different walks of the fitness industry, but we were the main players from the education space. And over time now, we've built more trust with them, and they've enabled us to. It's a hot off the press really, but they've enabled us to do our own level 3 qualification, which we're going to be piloting later on this year, as a hope that we can start to turn the tide of the way the education space with the level 3 can go.
What do you think, Ollie, is the role of a mentor when you're growing a business? And I'm sure there are a lot of trainers who would want to have a chat with you and say, how do we build a business like yours, like Ollie Marchon? I'm good at training. I'm an extremely good coach, extremely good PT. I've played sports all my life. How do I grow a business? And they would write to you. I'm sure you would say you would support them. Have you had mentors in your growth phase, and how have you worked with them?
It's very easy for me to say, yeah, I think it's the most important thing, but I think it's the most important thing. I think it's the most important thing. I think because it just saves you making all the mistakes. You save way more money in the end, even though the investment is fairly sizable now in the business coaching world. You save way more money. You bypass all the mistakes that mentor would have made. But I think it's about picking someone that you want to model yourself off, right? That's been there, that's done it, that's got a proven track record that you can really relate to. And I think, again, doing it for the right reasons. Like, I've never picked mentors because of the amount of money that they've made. I've picked mentors because of the impact and the credibility that they've had in the fitness space. So I think if you do follow, focus on a world-class product, the rewards will come back later on in life. I think it's just that long-term approach. You referenced the buying the cars, the watches, etc. Again, if I go back to why I came into it, it's just about the career. It's like, how do I still stay here at 50 years old? What does it look like as a fitness professional at 50 years old? Who's out there doing it? And there wasn't many. You mentioned Nick Mitchell. He's someone that I think there's a lot of inspiration can be taken from what he's achieved. But there aren't many people in our game that you can really look to. So it's either because they've not been able to achieve it, or it's not possible. But for me, I want to find out whether it's possible or not, rather than the other.
You mentioned credibility. I mean, it's your credibility which has got your collaboration with Represent. Tell me, how the fuck did that happen?
I think George had been through a bit of a personal transformation with his own fitness, for whatever reason, but he was dissatisfied with his own performance in business, but also physically. And I think at the time, again, through social media, he was looking in at the MARCHON business and what I was maybe achieving, and he was taking inspiration from that. Similarly, we were looking at the Represent business. I've been a fan of it for well over a decade, thinking, I love what those guys do. I love the way he was creating a sense of belonging and feeling through the campaigns that they would run, to really bring their clothes to life. I also then followed him personally, and I love what he was going through personally on his own journey. And then by chance, we were connecting on social media. He came down to see me and sat in this room, and we presented on a television screen about this collaboration on some clothing, not quite knowing whether that was the reason why he was coming down, but he said, that's actually why I'm here. We've got this 247 range we've just launched. We'd love to do a collab as our first kind of inaugural collaboration with an outsider. And I think just some real shared understanding between what we want to try and do with our respective businesses. Both very passionate about health and fitness. Him coming into it of just being in it for a couple of years and just loving everything about fitness, and me looking at him going, whilst he's growing this fashion brand, he can hold his own with his fitness because of his mentality and his attitude towards everything that he does, and that was something that was very inspiring.
And so what do you think you could learn from Represent, as if I'm from outside, and how do you think I can learn from Represent?
I think you can learn a lot from George personally for how he never doesn't miss a beat, right? We spoke about people in the UK being hustlers. Hustler would be doing him a disservice, but he's someone that doesn't miss a beat. The time in which he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed, he's kicking the shit out of everything that he's trying to achieve. If he gets off a flight, he still goes straight to the gym. That routine, that consistency is something that he's not faltered with. Now, when he has kids and a wife, maybe that may change a little bit, but I'm sure he'll create a new routine around that. So personally, I think you can learn a lot from him, and I think that's why obviously there's thousands of young guys and girls that look at him as an inspiration. I think from a business standpoint, they're focused heavily on product, they focus heavily on people, and they focus heavily on brand. And I think that's the trifecta that is just magical. They're always trying to innovate on their product. They're trying to stay ahead of the pack. If you ever go to Represent headquarters or you meet any one of their team, they're incredibly studious people. They're very passionate about the brand. They're very much aligned. And the brand, again, they're very protective over what the brand's about. They stay authentic. They don't let anything in from the outside. They don't deviate away from what they're trying to achieve. So I think you learn a lot from those things. But then also on a personal relationship with him, I'm able to ask him questions. When you went from X amount of revenue to this revenue, or 50 head count to 100, what were the things that you came up against? What was it like hiring a financial director? What was it like? How do you forecast for these certain situations? What's it like bringing in a CEO? Things that I'm not necessarily thinking about, but it's somewhere maybe in the future. He's able to kind of give me that knowledge. Even their CEO, Spenny, I saw him last Tuesday at the Fraser's Group event, and he stood and chatted for 10 minutes. And even just like that ability to be with someone who's been a former MD of Puma Europe, worked at some of the biggest brands in the world, and now he's the CEO of Represent. He's always willing to say really, really nice things, but also if I ask him any questions, he's always willing to help.
No, I think you've done exactly the same with your organization. You made a culture. Your people are authentic in what they do. They love what they do. Your community is so well connected with you. So congratulations, Ollie, for what you've done, and thank you for doing this with me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Samir.
Thanks.